Caucasian men. And so that when women go to assert themselves like they need to assert themselves because it's about repairing our families and it's about repairing our communities, how do you say to a woman that she's fighting too hard to save her sons? How do you say to her that she's too hard when she speaks about what's being done to her father, her uncles, her brothers? Do you understand? And so it's very sad because one of the things that I see is that nature recovers itself in piecemeals, which means it's one organism, then another organism, then another organism. So when you talk about repairing the family, you got to deal firstly with that, which is primarily responsible for family getting here. So you can't talk about repairing the youth and you're not talking about repairing that woman. You can't talk about repairing that man and you're not talking about repairing that woman. So as the Moors communicate, the woman is primary. Does not mean she's more important then, but because that's how Caucasians have taken it, and that's what they've vomited into the minds of the indigenous black man, then that's what he's vomiting up. And it's for that reason that he's become co-conspirator in the dismantling of his own household and community. So he's becoming infeminized because he's following the culcates of a homosexual that's hiding. How are you promulgating what it is Caucasian men say when you know they have a history of homosexuality? So what makes you think they're going to communicate anything to suggest to you what the problem with your heterosexual relationships are? And so it hurt my heart to, and all predicated on what? Predicated on what? Because the suggestion is black women have taken something from black men in a construct designed and maintained by Caucasians, really, as if they're not moving us like pieces on a chessboard. It's unconscionable that we would take the position to fight each other. To that's how it's supposed to be. And when I look at history, I see that when we both enculturated Caucasians' perspective of our roles, when a woman stepped back, she gave up her ability to protect. Because the man cannot function as a woman no more than a woman can function as a man. And there's a particular reason in which you come through a woman. And that before you can even digest what this world is about from her, you have to continue to suckle when you get here. Now that's science. Without white people, black people, man or woman having any say. So how do we override that and come up with this nonsense about where her parameters are? I figure if we're both in prison, then both of our responsibility is to figure out how to get out. Period. And if there's a role she must play or a role you got to play, then you better play it, because it's about freedom. And freedom doesn't have a gender. Truth doesn't have a gender. So this genderizing, which is a Caucasian thing, that's not us. It's not us. That's not us. It's not us. We would base it on function. And function is based upon the relevancy of what is needed. So I want to show these pictures of young black men. I'm amazed at how there's more conversation about black men or young black boys who begin to show the distinction of going in on themselves in the sense that they are mating with themselves. But you don't have the same outcry or focus on the young black girls who are doing it. And when I say mating with themselves, see, what I don't want to give any legitimacy to is that they're acting like women. Because I think the only one can act like a woman is a woman. I think the only thing or organism that can act like a man is a man. See, you're confusing it when you suggest that a man could act like a woman. So therefore, if he chooses to be with another man, that's the effeminization of. No, it's not. That's something going wrong with the masculinity. And over masculinity is not effeminization. But because that's the concept that Caucasians are feeding black people, there's no analysis. If it's over masculine, it's not feminine at all. It's just a dysfunction of. So it is neither. You know, a dysfunction of something doesn't mean it automatically absorbs that which is next or junk to it. No, that's not how it happens. You can't stand next to a rich person and just because you're extremely poor, stand next to him and absolve any of his richness or vice versa. No, there's just a malfunction that has occurred. You don't automatically absorb what you stand in or what is next to. And just because you're feminine and masculine to be over something don't mean it's because you're taking more of the other attribute in. That's who said that? Where is that possible? So it's disturbing because I would say that nature ruling over all is communicating to African American men or indigenous men, for those who have those precepts, that there's something wrong with your disposition towards women. And so we're going to take it from you for you to see yourself, and vice versa. I mean, that's the lesson we say we learn with Caucasians, that they represent the lowerness of ourselves, and that if we weren't doing certain things, we wouldn't see this. And so I would say that, well, if we're seeing an aberration of something, it means we're engaged in behavior that creates it because we're the creators. So that must mean that women are holding something towards men and men are holding something towards women that causes us to be off kilter to the point that we can't even express what we say is the balance between our function one to the other. It could be nature saying, you know, you're not getting it right. So from within, we're going to tear this structure down. Because nature has her say, or its say, all the time. So I don't know if you want to pay too much attention to a man that's less intelligent than yourself, which is what we would be doing if we pay attention to what Caucasians say. And regardless of what we say, I would ask us to do what we did in ancient times, and that is investigate what nature would say. What would nature say is going on? Because nature will point you to laws that cannot be overridden by man or woman, black or white. So what would nature say? And nature would say there's a violation of natural principles, and let us deal with that. We leave the white female out. And I think because we left the white female out, it's hard for us to recognize where the impact of her function has had an impact on how it is that we deal. So that's why it's always about masculinity. And anytime we recognize there's an imbalance, we'll go to blame the female because we'll say white male superiority. No, white males and white females work in conjunction with each other. They're not superior, they're inferior. And so the impact of having two individuals who are inferior, designing and maintaining a construct that's oppressive to you, does impact your relationship, your perception of your relationships. But you got to put her in there right along with the Caucasian man because she functioned in partnership with him. So you can see your perception of what a woman's role is really predicated on what the white man determined the white woman's role was. But now you got to understand that both of their roles were to suppress you and yours. So I don't think you can try to have the black woman emulate her, and that when she doesn't, you say she's over masculine. Because I think that's a slave mentality and perspective. I think you're looking at yourself from the perspective of a white man. And I think you're projecting yourself into his head and allowing his thoughts to determine how you see yourself in the world. And so you want the black woman to act like the white woman because you want to be empowered like the white man is over you. Now that's a slave mentality. And we don't understand that because we're using his words and we're using his lack of reasoning. And it has spread to the point that it is causing us to malfunction. So that's why you're going to see this increase of homosexuality with both the male and the female, because you're trying to predicate your entire frame of thought and behavior on homosexuals. So what do you expect? You trying to be like a white man who is a low-key, down-low homosexual, and you don't think that that's going to increase you producing homosexuality? Because it's all coming from your thought. So you can't think like him and not produce that which is hidden within him. He'll hide it. We're not hiding it. We can't hide simply because we're melanated. You can't hide blackness. Blackness is going to express the good and bad of it. So I'm not saying that it's not it's a serious issue. I'm saying that where we err is when we go to examine it through the lens of Eurocentrism. That when we go to speak on it from the perspective of a Caucasian male, that when we fail to look at that the construct we're in and the dialogue that transition as precepts that determine our behavior come from homosexuals themselves. So that you can't divest your reality from that, so you can't divest the reasoning for it from them. So it makes no sense for you to put it on each other. You're not designing a construct. You're not living within your culture. You're not determining the precepts or the values or the morals. You're not determining any of that. So you can't put it on one another. See, I could put it on you if you and I were designing it and this is part of your design. Then I can come and say to you, hey, this part here is causing this malfunction. So we're going to have to address it. But if you're not the designer of the construct that you're within, the precepts and so forth, it's not on you. You have to look at the one who has created that. And we don't want to do that. And the reason why we don't want to do that is because then black men will have to face, as Bobby Wright says, the bull. You'll have to quit chasing the cape because the black woman in this situation has become the cape. And you'll have to look at the one who's swinging her around and telling you that she's your problem. Telling you that, hey, because she's the head of the house, that's why you turning into gay. That's telling you, oh, because she's got jobs, that's why you aren't working. That's a cape. And that's white men swinging that around. And once black men stop being beguiled and chasing that cape and realize the one who's waving that cape, then it's on. Then it's on. Then it's on. He don't want to face the white man is the problem. And so therefore, that being the position and the situation that we're in, let me tell you what the responsibility of the black woman is. She's got to face it. No different from Nzinga. If the men have decided that they will not fight, that they'll blame you, then your responsibility for the nation, for the young, and even for them is to fight. And if that to them seems an overcompensation for what they are lacking, then so be it. But that's where we are at this day and time. And you'll know it because you can find where we have been here in history. It is merely a situation whereas men have decided that they do not want to fight because they do not trust that they can win. Because they are too afraid of dying. And white men have made them afraid so. So black women are going to have to kick in. And that mother instinct is going to have to kick in. And it does not matter who is comfortable with it or not. Because if we do not allow the mother instinct to kick in, we got a problem. And we got a problem in the universe. One of the things that I saw was when you talk about masonry, you're talking about a young man who's trained to be king. I think masonry was all about building the spirit of that male man up till he could be righteous on this plane. And in coming to be righteous on this plane, to be acknowledged as a king, he had to be one to acknowledge the primacy of woman, because she symbolized the primacy of that which gave you birth into this physical existence. So that being the case, when that was co-opted, and now you find us going through their pseudo systems of learning, well, the only thing that they could dub you is the opposite of what we dubbed you. And if we dubbed you as king, the only thing they could dub you is a dog, a beast, because that's them. That's the reflection of them. So for them to begin to communicate to you and have you communicate and curse the feminine is to curse the very thing that brought you into existence. And I'm not even just talking about into existence on the physical plane through the physical womb of the woman. I'm talking about the spiritual plane into existence, period. Because when we talk about words, words are powerful, and words are always creating the reality of existence or taking something out of existence. And when you take it out of existence, you call it a curse. When you bring it into existence, you call it a blessing. You bring it in, you call it birth. You take it out, you call it death. And so with the power of the tongue, remember the scripture is the power of life and death in that tongue. So to have Black men communicating verbally about the detriment of Black women to themselves, not realizing you are cursing yourself because you're taking yourself out of existence to remove her. How are you going to get here? To remove that principle on a spiritual level, how are you to be anything other than a beast? That's what the temples were about. To educate you about, to bring you up, to compensate for that part of you that was missing. Because there is a part of you that is missing. And that has to do with evolution and revolution. It is not about revolution, it's about evolution. Because revolution is going to take you back to what it used to be. And that's going backwards. And we don't move backwards, ever forward. So it's Caucasians with the shit that they give us under the auspice that this is based upon their studies is only to pass that to us, which we will begin to emit and therefore curse ourselves. Everybody know you don't call a woman a bitch because of what it does to her on a physical, emotional, spiritual level. You don't. Just like you don't call a man a motherfucker because you know what it does. So we can't use words so loosely and suggest that one to the other is a negative. That one to the other is causing us to be other than what the creator designed us to be. Well, hello, she is the creator. What are you talking about? So it's almost as if you're asking God, why did you make me this way? Or suggesting that God made you inappropriately. You better recognize when it is God you're talking to, or when it's God talking to you, and when it's the devil talking to you. Because remember, that is what caused the fall, is when one listens to the devil. And all the devil is going to communicate to you is the opposite of what is real. So we've been fighting this battle for a very long time, to the point that they don't even tell you that that's what the story is about. Remove her from the story. And you already on the pathway to homosexuality. And she has been removed from the story. If you look at it historically, Caucasian males have been trying to remove women from the story for a very long time. And so he needs the black man's help to make it permanent. That's why he's already in position making himself robots. That's how much he dislikes the feminine, is that he rather replace that, which will give him pseudo comfort, because I guess he's bypassed the dog and now it's a robot. It's got to look like a woman, you know, but he don't want a real one. And that's who black men are following intellectually. That's who you get in your paradigms and your reasoning for the problems of the world and our relationships from. Really? A man that wants to play with a $6,000 doll? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. 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 It's very sad. It's very sad. And at this point in time, as Khalid Muhammad used to say, no hold bar. Feelings are going to be hurt, but what the fuck is a feeling anyway? When you're talking about whether or not we're going to be able to move forward as we need to. Because the suggestion is, it's got to get worse before it gets better. Well, I don't know about anybody else, but as far as I'm concerned, this shit right here is unacceptable. To see us actually existing intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, and physically on the level of dogs, because we're under the construct and trying to make the precepts of dogs make sense, is fucking unacceptable. It's unacceptable. That's like having dogs walk around in human clothes and then putting leashes around human beings' necks and walking them around. That's abhorrent. Now, us promulgating their ideas like that shit makes sense. I think one brother said it best, and that was, the only thing we appear to be doing is eating out of the vomit of Caucasians who have ravished our ancestors and their wisdom, and because they can't digest it properly, the only thing they do in effort to is vomit. And so we're going through the vomit as if we're going to find something nutritional in it. I say leave them their vomit and return to the essence of ourselves, and we would look and ask, what is nature saying? When she allows you to disembobulate as such, to explode out of order as such, you have to be extremely out of order already. So enough is enough. And I think it's going to take women to take a bold step. No different than the Nzinga had to do. Because we're in a situation where our men have been backed into a corner and they don't know they can win, or that we have to fight. And if some die, so be it. What? No one's standing anywhere. You know, we have become a nation of cowards because you live with cowards. You live under cowards. Cowards are walking around acting as if they're the baddest thing on this motherfucking planet. And we seem to bow consciously and unconsciously to that. You know, so that's a violation of nature, and that's a violation of universal principle, and it's disrespectful to the ancestors. So I think we have to suffer to a certain extent because of the violation that we are committing in just bowing to this nonsense. So you can't bow to homosexuality and don't think on some subconscious level you're not going to begin to produce that in your reality. Everybody know, for those who know the history, know that their history is full of homosexuality. So then you tell me how you're going to inculcate with that, how you're going to quote unquote integrate with that, and I think you're not going to begin to promote that, but you want to blame it on the black woman. For it to be able to be blamed on her, you would have had to be producing that from the beginning. And you can't find that in history. So that's not even logical. And the reason why you say it and promote it is because you don't want to fight. You don't want to fight. and you don't want her to fight, because then you'll get a better picture of yourself than you trying to hide behind the image of a fucking Caucasian. But I'm saying you're gonna have to deal with it. You know, everybody's talking about going back to Africa. How you going back to Africa and your communities here, your nation here is suffering? How you want to claim that you got something to offer there and you're not building anything here? You have a better chance here with individuals that speak the language you speak. And I mean consciously or unconsciously for that matter. It's an issue of you cannot live around weak people and not become weakened. You cannot be under the guide of disoriented people and not become disoriented yourself. And we eat their shit 24/7 because they're spewing it 24/7. You wake up, you in their shit, you fall asleep to their shit, and you literally eat their shit. And you don't think you're gonna be full of shit? And you don't think the community is gonna reflect that? That we so intelligent, but our shit is broken? That we're so loving towards others, but our young are dying like they're dying? I would say that the universe and that nature is so disgusted with us that it would allow us to turn in and on ourselves and not be able to reproduce ourselves again. Why? Because we are not adding to nature. We've actually become destructive just by the ideas and the culture that we maintain. So now we're as worse as the virus itself. So now nature got to fight us too, because we're fighting that which is natural, because we're fighting each other. So nature's got to deal with us like it's got to deal with the virus. And we're either going to align ourselves correctly or we're going to be wiped out. But we'll be wiped out because of the behavior that we engage in. This turning on each other, this fighting each other, this allowing our young to die or to go around as disoriented as they are, that's negligence on our part. That's negligence on our part. To allow them to imitate monkeys is negligent on our part. It's one thing about being in the South, makes very clear to you who the monkey is, who came from a monkey, and who has monkey behavior. I'm not talking about the one that likes to act a fool or they like to capture acting a fool on camera. I'm talking about the one that's really the fool. So we got to fight. Real talk, real talk. That's the reason why we're coming back. To come back is symbolic of the prodigal son. And when the prodigal son goes back, remember, a celebration is to occur. And individuals won't understand why a celebration. Many individuals, they'll say to me, hey, why are you going back there? Oh, this, that, and the other is going on. That's where you go. For all those who would like to say they are Christians, your edict is to go places as such. And I would dare say, if you call yourself a Muslim, that would probably be part of your edict as well. That you take it to the sick. You take it to the dying. How are you trying to sit on vacation? Nigga, where? When? How? Are you on vacation all the time? Which means you're not dealing with it whatsoever. You're trying to stay away from it. You're acting like you can. Like it's not your responsibility. Unacceptable. That's absolutely unacceptable. No, when we get back, you got to step it up because it's been stepped up. And you got to get hold of the young and you got to feed them the truth. And you got to stand on the truth and you got to live the truth every day because they're confused. People say one thing and do another. It's our time. But the reality is, what has to happen is that which suppresses our soul because of what's been poured into us, because it's been poured by a construct that is not ours. You know, you have to be able to bring them from through that, therefore, to where you are, because you come through it from within yourself, from within your own struggles. So when our ancestors, during the time frame which has been classified as the growth of Afrocentricity, began to communicate, because you don't find people communicating that too much anymore, that you have to come from African indigenous paradigm. And so that's very important, because the language that's attached to it will either put you into a mental prison or it will bring you out of a mental prison. So when Caucasians communicate about where we are and what our problems are, they do so from a mental perspective of seeing us as beasts, as seeing us as soulless people. So therefore we can't use, that's why we can't use that construct, is because you'd be approaching them as if they're soulless, as if they don't have within them the same light that you have within you. So it is about bringing them to the awareness of themselves. So you speak from where you are. You don't have to get down. The issue is, we got down trying to communicate to Caucasian people, and we have yet to get up. So you never meet a nigga where they are, because that's what we tried to do with Caucasian people. We literally were under the impression that we could teach them, but they really were soulless beings, are soulless beings. And so if we don't realize now, you never get down to where a person is, because the chances are it's going to be a struggle with you getting up. And that's what our relationship with them illustrates. So I would say that if we're talking about communicating with our own people that appear to be lost, it's not about getting down where they are. It is about bringing them into the awareness of themselves. And so it would be more analogous to bringing them to where you are, because you see who you are and you see who they are, and they need to see who they are and see who you are. You know, that's what I'm talking about. It's a change of language. This shit that Caucasians have given us under the auspice of, hey, these are the tools for you to repair yourself, bullshit. How God gonna skip over us and give it to them, and they're the oppressor? So I can't see them having the tool. Women are fucked up because man fucked them up. Why? Because he treated her like a hoe, because he acted like a pimp. And in the process, you can't be a pimp and she a hoe, and you raise sons and daughters who know who they are, who love who they are, who respect who they are. So there ain't no getting down to where nobody is. You stand up, get up where you need to be, and go get them. Go get them. Because they are where they are because you didn't go get them. Because you wouldn't stand up. Because you were too busy pimping. But who were you pimping but her? So she can't be a hoe and a mother too. So no, this is self-reflection here. And since the Trumps and white people at this point in time can't hide from their filth, from their dirty laundry, let us stop hiding from ours. The reality is, the men were too busy pimping. And when you pimped her out and made her a whore and she had children for you, guess what? Guess what? They are confused. Why? Because there was no love in the house. The daddy was a pimp and the mama was a hoe. Or at least that's how they were treating themselves and each other. So I guess a child coming from that type of union ain't gonna want to be a boy or a girl or black. So let us be real. They are where they are because the adults went where they went. Period. And that's what you tell the youth. You know why? Because that's what they live. Stop talking down to youth as if they don't understand where they are or how they got there. That's why they have no regard for adults, because adults want to talk down to them, because you bring in that same conceptualization that Caucasians do when they talk to you. But you need to remember this. White people talk to 90-year-old men and call them boys. And they will say to an 80-year-old African-American woman, girl. So that's a talking down to. So when they communicate to you that, hey, you need to meet so-and-so where they are, I'm telling you, they're coming from a consciousness that do not see you as human, let alone divine. And I'm saying to you that that boy, that girl are divine beings. So ain't no getting down. You go direct. You stand and you meet them eye to eye on a higher realm. Why? Because they're there too, looking down, believe it or not, and judging you. Young people's behavior judges the generation before them. But because we don't look at it spiritually anymore, we're under the impression that they're beneath us. No, 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 no. They're above us. Communicating with lower behavior, a reflection of our lowness in our thinking, in our speech, and in our actions. They're judging us. We're under the impression we're judging them. No, you can't judge them. You could judge the generation you came from, but you can't judge the generation that's in front of you. That generation is judging you. You understand? So there can be no going down to where they are as if, they're beneath you. No, they're above you. Get it? That's the African perspective. They're judging you. And so what we're doing and what we're supposed to be doing is getting our act together. Because what they're reflecting back to us is that there's something terribly wrong with the way we're thinking, with the way we're talking, and with what we're doing. Because they would be at a different place if that was not the case. We're the ones being judged, not them. The generation after them will judge them. Under the circumstance where they are is quite normal. Because we put them there. So we need to straighten ourselves up before we even go talk to them, because when we go to talk to them, we'll be talking to the ancestors. And how dare we go to talk to the ancestors like we got really anything to impart to them? Remember what we said when a child was being born? Which ancestor is this returning? Because if you understood and you remembered that it was ancestor returning, you wouldn't be talking to them as if they were soulless, as if they couldn't comprehend where you are in your highness. It's a Caucasian that would do that because they don't believe in any of that. They don't understand any of that. But we have no business talking like that, and we have no business addressing it like that, because when you go to them from that frame, as they should, they're going to dismiss you because the ancestors is saying to you, you have not gotten it together yourself, so you're not in a position to talk to me. And that's what's happening. It's not that they're hard-headed. We've not come the right way because you come in a Caucasian way. These are our ancestors judging us, sacrificing a part of themselves. But if we were looking at it from spiritual eyes, from our perspective, we would see that. But we're looking at it from Caucasians' perspective, so we don't. Those are divine beings in every child. And all they're communicating to us is our error. We got to fix it. And when we go to them humbly, realizing that we got to fix it. And that we step down from being the divine beings we were to imitate the behavior of people who are less evolved. And we repent for that. And so we pick up where we left off and move them towards the places in which we supposed to have prepared for them. The communication that we got to have, it's not in books. It's not in books. It comes straight from the soul. And like the scripture said, when they are the ones you're supposed to be talking to, they recognize it in your voice. They recognize it in what you say and how you say it. Because they have not heard it before. And because they have not heard it before, they have not gotten it together. They'll know to get it together when they hear the voice. When they hear the communication. It has not been compromised by the tainting of white ideas. I would say take nothing that Caucasians have given you on this journey that we are on, gotta go. Because everything they give you will sabotage. So if they tell you to approach it this way, find another way. Because their mission has never been, nor will it ever be, to repair the damage that they in part have done. because they still talk from the spirit. They they still talk from the spirit. It's no different than, remember, prior to moving from the South, we talked in spirit because it was predicated on us still being in a somewhat natural environment, although we were in an unnatural circumstance. But once we move towards the city, all of that is constructed in a virtual reality. The city is more reflective of a virtual reality. There's nothing about it that's real because it has really reworked nature to the point whereas nature reflects its ideas and not vice versa.